All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome. My name is Jess San Giorgio, and I'm one of the district strategy consultants here at Nearpod and Vocabulary. This particular session is going to be focusing on how you can use Nearpod for both language arts and social studies instruction. So we're going to be focusing on social studies and ELA or RLA content. In order for you to fully participate in this lesson, I'm going to ask that you join me in the lesson with the link or the code. So the link is going to be posted in the Teams chat box, and the code will stay on my screen. So you can choose either use the link or the code. If you're choosing to use the link, you can just click on that. That's in the Teams chat, and it should take you directly into the lesson itself. And if you're choosing to use the code, you can either go to join.nearpod.com or log into your Nearpod account, enter that code, and you'll be taken into the lesson that way. So it's totally up to you. Whichever way is easier for you to get connected with the lesson. And like I mentioned, this session is going to be focused on both Nearpod in the language arts classroom as well as the social studies classroom. We're going to be taking you through some sample activities and some content so you can start to think about what you might want to use and incorporate into your lessons with your students. If you have any questions at all as we go, please don't hesitate to post those in the Teams chat box. Our cameras and microphones are automatically turned off, and the best way for us to communicate is through the chat. There are a couple of reminders about PD in the chat. So please don't hesitate to check out that chat, look at the reminders that have been posted there, as well as join me in that Nearpod lesson. I've just posted the link one more time, so remember to please click on that link and join me in the lesson if you haven't done so already. As a reminder, that's the best way for you to follow along and participate. You'll be able to take notes with me, look at all the information I have available, and you'll be able to interact with all of the activities as well. So again, take some time to follow along, join into the lesson so you can participate, and get ready to get the most out of today's learning experience that way. I'm going to give it just about one more minute before we start to dive into the content I have to share with you. And again, if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to post those in the chat. These sessions are being recorded, so you can always go back and review these at a later time. And we'll be able to provide some additional resources at the end of today's training so that you can go back to review learning or continue learning from wherever you leave off. All right. So again, welcome everybody. This session is Nearpod in the RLA or ELA language arts classroom, as well as the social studies classroom as well. So we're going to be focusing on both of those core content areas and how you can leverage all the tools, activities, and content in Nearpod to get the most out of all of your lessons to share with your students. So this session will be around designing lessons for your specific content. You're going to get some workshop time to practice what you've learned and hopefully get you thinking about all the different types of activities that might resonate or work best for your unique learners. Now, here is our first activity of the day. This is our poll question in Nearpod. So please select the statement that best describes your Nearpod knowledge. I'm going to flip over to the teacher side and start the activity for you so you can select A, B, or C. If you need to have a resource, you can click on reference media in the corner. You can see where that's linked out to our website, and you can find more information there. There's no right or wrong answers here. It's just going to really help inform my instruction as we go forward throughout this training today. All right, great. So far, it looks like most of you are familiar with Nearpod, which is awesome. So maybe you understand the basics, you have a foundation. That is great to see. And we can just work from there. No matter where you are in your Nearpod journey, I am confident that you're going to walk away learning a lot of great new things today, and I'm excited to show you what I have to share. All right, great work, everyone. Thank you so much for submitting your answers. I can see we have 100% participation, which is awesome. Let's go ahead and keep moving. Now, even our more familiar or intermediate to advanced Nearpod users tend to forget about the note-taking feature. When you join into the lesson with the link or the code, you'll see that little pen and paper icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. I always recommend clicking on that pen and paper icon and taking notes, especially in a learning environment like this one when we're doing professional development as a group. This can also be a really great way to capture additional evidence of student learning when you share these lessons with your students too. You can take notes along with me, choose where those notes get sent, and at the end of today's session, you'll receive a PDF version of this entire presentation and the notes that you took. So if you're somebody like me that likes to go back and review your notes later on, remember what it is that you learned, you can do that all within the Nearpod platform. So by the end of today's training, you will understand how to design and explore principles to create lessons for specific content. We are highlighting ELA and social studies content in this particular session. And you're going to know how to select Nearpod features to complement your higher order questioning experience for those core subject areas. Now, just as a refresher, for those of you that might need a bit of a review, remember that Nearpod is an extremely versatile tool. All of you have indicated that you have some familiarity with the platform already, which is fantastic. Remember that you can take from our Nearpod library. We have hundreds and thousands of lessons, videos, and activities that you can utilize at any given time. When you pull in those lessons, videos, and activities from the Nearpod library into your specific account, you can either utilize them as they are, launching live or student-paced, or make edits and changes to those lessons. So you can tweak and adjust these lessons as much as you want. You can upload your own resources or slides into a Nearpod lesson, create your own slides, utilize our Google Slides extension, and also access all the pre-made interactive videos. You can also make your own interactive videos too. So just as a quick review, if you need a refresher on any of those things, you can find more information about that on our website. But hopefully some of you have already had some experience either pulling from the Nearpod library or creating and editing your own content within the platform itself. So what are some strategies that you are using in your core content areas? I want you to think about these questions and then go ahead and post in the Collaborate board now. What key factors of language arts and social studies instruction would you like to incorporate into your Nearpod lessons? Please think about that question and then answer by typing in the Collaborate board on the screen. You can share your thoughts in the text bar and even add in media if you'd like to make this come to life even more. So I'll give everybody a couple of seconds to think about this question and post on that Collaborate board. All right, great. I'm starting to see your posts popping up. If you haven't shared already, please do so now. All right, graphic organizers, diagrams, plots, open-ended higher order questioning. So we have our open-ended questions, vocabulary graphic organizers. These are great. What great ideas, what great strategies to include in your Nearpod lessons. Let's see if we can get a couple more. All right, great. All right, so we're thinking about these strategies that we want to incorporate into our Nearpod lessons, collaboration, all the other great things that you've said on this board. The good news is that Nearpod is going to be able to help you do that. So you said some of these things, and there's a few more here that maybe weren't said, but are going to be just as important for language arts and social studies instruction. So those higher level thinking skills, vocab development, you said both of those things on the Collaborate board. What about real world connections or opportunities for students to practice? Building fluency and reading comprehension and academic conversations and explanations. So when we think about language arts and social studies practices, we want to make sure we're including all of these strategies and incorporating them into our Nearpod lessons. And that's what the next following sample activities are going to help you think through. Think about which ones stand out to you, what you might think is helpful or that you might want to add into your lessons, and then you'll get some time to practice that on your own. So let's start with ELA or RLA, so Nearpod activities and media for specifically language arts content. So we are going to pull in some activities that are already in our library. Remember, when you go into the Nearpod library, you can search by featured, by grade, by subject, by content type, and by publishing partner or brand. You can also filter by standards. So when you're in that library, you can click on the blue filter by standard option in the upper right-hand corner. And that's going to help you narrow down your subject, grade, and even strand for that standard. I always recommend, regardless of what kind of content you're looking for in the library, that you do a couple of different keyword and filter searches to really narrow down what it is that you're looking for. Because we have so much great content in that library that's ready to go, sometimes you need a couple different filter searches or different combinations of them to really narrow it down. But there's going to be really great content that you can use. And let's start with highlighting some of that ELA content that's there. So the first thing I want to highlight for language arts here is using Nearpod videos as an active learning experience. If you've never seen our interactive Nearpod videos, they are awesome. You can use the video as part of your instruction or as the entire lesson. We have questions that are embedded in the pre-made interactive videos, and you can always add in your own interactive questions as well. You can edit and adjust them. You can tweak or change them. So you can really make these whatever you want for your students. You can use the pre-made videos, and then you can also create your own interactive videos with your own video files, as we mentioned earlier. So I'm going to show you an example of one of these interactive videos that comes from the Nearpod library. This is a video on what is poetry. Now, I have the option to let you play it on your own individually and go through this video on your own time, or keep us together as a group. And since I am sharing my screen through Teams, I'm going to select Teacher Plays, and I'm going to click Continue. Now we're going to be watching my screen as we watch this video and learn about poetry. At each of these different activities, you're going to be prompted to complete questions where you've joined into the Nearpod lesson on your devices, okay? So even though we're watching the video together as a group, be prepared to answer these questions when they pop up in the video. They will go live within the Nearpod lesson for you to answer. Here we go.
Was there something, maybe a food or kind of music that you used to as a little kid, but as you got older, you kind of learned to appreciate it? Like, I hated avocado. Hated it. Then I tried guacamole, and now I love it. That's kind of how I felt about poetry. I just didn't get it. It was like this secret language that only English teachers knew how to read. Like, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. I mean, come on, Shakespeare. Could have just said you look nice.
All right, here is the first open-ended question activity embedded in the video. It says, give an example of a poem, book, or story that you didn't understand the first time you read it. So navigate back to the Nearpod lesson and go ahead and answer this question now. This really takes these videos from passive to active learning. Provide students with opportunities to submit their responses within the video itself. So take a minute. It doesn't need to be a super long answer, but go ahead and just try to type a couple words in there so you can practice what this is like. All right, great. Dr. Seuss, Charlotte's Web. These are awesome. So maybe these are books, stories, poems that at first you didn't quite understand the first time you read it. So I'm seeing your participation tick up here in the corner. I can share out these individual responses with the group and we can stop and talk about this so it can prompt group discussion, or we can just keep watching.
I thought about it. I realized that, yeah, kind of like a secret. That's exactly what's so about it. Every time you read a book, you might feel one way about it, and a friend might see something totally different. It's really not about being right or wrong. Poetry is different from other kinds of writing. How? Well, for one, grammar doesn't apply to poetry. Regular informative writing that you read in a novel or newspaper is called prose, and it follows established rules for punctuation, capitalization, and sentence structure. But poetry doesn't have to use any of that. They can be long, short, complete sentences, phrases, rhyming, not rhyming. Some poems have stanzas or groups of lines, and some don't. They can be written in first person, second, or third.
All right, now here is our second open-ended question activity. How does poetry differ from prose? See if you can take what you just learned in that video and answer this question now. All right, great. So I'm seeing you're answering this question. This time, maybe I want to share something out with you. So now I'm able to share this. Poetry doesn't follow grammar rules, and everybody can see what this person has written. We can talk about it. We can highlight what you did, celebrate your work, continue to discuss. Or I can just go back to my reports later on to view this data there. Let's keep watching. We'll do one more activity before we move on.
So you might be wondering, like anything, technically, yeah, but you'll find similar elements in a lot of poems. Poetry started as an oral, and a lot of it is read aloud. So if you ask me to define poetry, I'd say it's when writers choose their sound as well as their meaning. Sound devices like rhyme were first used to make it easier to remember. Other sound devices, like alliteration, that's when you repeat the same sound at the beginning of words. Draw attention to what's being said, like when John Milton writes, "Behemoth, biggest born of earth." You know he chose those words for a reason.
All right, now here is the next activity. This time it's a little bit different. It's a multiple choice activity that's embedded into the video instead of an open-ended question. Pretty cool, right? So take a minute, think about this, and see if you can answer A, B, C, or D. Now I can look at this in a pie chart view, so I'm going to start to see your data populate, and I'll see this pie chart and what the answers break down to, and I can flip over and I can look at your individual answers as well. So take a minute and see if you can answer these instead. All right, great. So I'm seeing you selecting your answers. You're reading through these different examples. And you're answering which of these best explains why poets started using rhyme. All right. So hopefully you get the idea of what a video like this can be like, right? So we're focusing on language arts and poetry. You're watching this video and you're being prompted to complete activities throughout it. Remember that if you liked these activities, how they're designed already, great. You can always go back and you can use this exactly how it is. We pulled this directly from our Nearpod library. But if you wanted to make edits or changes or adjust these activities, you could certainly do that as well. All right, we're going to keep moving on. Let's talk now about using Nearpod to facilitate reading, writing, and discussion. So first you saw those activities within the video. Now we're going to use some other activities to do things like have formative assessments to monitor comprehension, make sure that all students can answer about any recent piece of literature, or allow students to share in the instruction and the learning. And this might give you some creative ideas for types of activities that you could build in Nearpod to support language arts instruction. So first we have this drawing activity. It says using supporting details from the text, compare and contrast two characters. So this could be from a book that we're reading together as a class, maybe books that students are reading on their own, or whatever it is that we're focusing on during a specific unit. You have all these different drawing tools at the bottom of the screen, including pens and highlighters, as well as text boxes and images to complete this graphic organizer activity. So think of two characters that you know from literature and go ahead and see if you can start comparing and contrasting those supporting details. This does not need to be anything too elaborate, but I want you to just try to play around with these drawing tools and see what this would be like for students to complete. All right, great. I can see you filling out maybe your characters, adding in images, writing or drawing. Remember that the drawing activity defaults to a blank screen, but you can also include graphic organizers or any images for students to annotate or write on. And you have all these different options, being able to add in images or just use those drawing tools. You can also use the text box if that's more helpful. And on my screen right now, you can see that I'm able to get a window into what you're doing. So I'm able to see this work coming back in real time. I can see what you're writing, what you're drawing. I can check in with you if I don't see you working yet, or I can address any misconceptions as they're coming up. And I can always go back and view these in the data reports too if I wanted to explore more there. So you could take these pre-made ELA activities, or you could create your own. You could use whatever files or resources or materials you already have. And when they're put into the drawing tool, it's just going to allow students to be annotate or write to complete these graphic organizers. All right, we're going to keep going. It's okay if you're not finished. I just want to give you all these examples and make sure we have enough time for everything. But I love that I'm seeing your work coming through. I'm seeing that you're working on these tools to adjust, to create, to compare these characters. All right, I hate to cut you off, but we are going to keep going. One of the cool things, though, that I could do is if I pull up your work and I'm watching what you're doing, I can give you direct feedback. So if I'm watching what you're doing and I think that you're right on track, I can go ahead and I can use my tools on my screen to comment on what you're doing, give you encouragement, write or type to you, and provide that feedback as you go, which is super cool. I love the ability to do that. This is the only activity where you can do that right now in the Draw It. You're able to provide that feedback, and then you're able to share out work with the entire group, either with or without that teacher feedback too. And when I go back, I'm able to see that I provided you that feedback right here on my screen. All right, great. Now here's our next activity. This is a collaborate board, and this time I have 3 different columns for you to post in. So it says, consider the book that you are currently reading. Share your responses to each column on the board, and then identify any commonalities between your book and others. So in the first column, you're prompted to describe your main character, and you can type in the collaborate board like normal. In the second column, it says, how has your character changed since the beginning of the book? And in the third column, share the conflict your character has faced so far. The one thing I really want to point out about this particular collaborate board, this has been set up with different columns that for you to post in. Make sure as you're typing your responses in the text bar that you're then choosing which column the post goes in. So you've got describing your main character, how your character has changed, and the conflict your character has faced. So make sure you have the right column selected before your posts go live. So see if you can answer this activity. You don't need to post in every column just to save time. Just maybe choose one that you want to post in for now. All right, great. So far you've all posted in that first column describing your main character. Love it. I'm seeing all these different characters. Now you could go on to add in additional comments about your character in each of these other columns. So Allie becomes confident because she gets help from her teacher and her friends. Great. So that's how she changes throughout the book. All right. I see you describing your characters. Some of you are typing in things that are a little bit shorter, more brief. Some of you are really going into detail about your characters. There is a text limit on the Collaborate board posts, but students can post multiple times. And there's all these different settings and tools that you can adjust, right? So that you can use the Collaborate board in different ways. I love this concept of including multiple columns where students are prompted to post in each one. All right, these are looking awesome, but let's go ahead and keep going. I can see that you've posted in all of the different columns, and hopefully this is getting your wheels turning about how you might be able to use an activity like this for language arts instruction. All right, here's our next activity. This time it's a drag and drop activity. So we're looking at observations and inferences. It gives an example of what an observation and an inference is at the top, and then it gives some directions. You're going to click on the vocabulary to review the definitions, and then you're going to drag and drop to where they belong in this graphic organizer chart. Okay? So it gives you all these directions. Now you can hide the instructions so you can see the entire graphic organizer, and then I can start to read through these labels on the side. Okay, so maybe I go ahead and move this one here. Okay, maybe I put this one here. Maybe here. All right, so I'm taking all these text labels and I'm dragging and dropping to where they belong on this graphic organizer to indicate observations and inferences and compare the differences between both. I also could add in additional tools down here like the drawing or the text to elaborate on what I did. Just like the drawing activity, you still have those same tools available, but you're dragging and dropping the labels here. That's what you're prompted to do in this particular activity. The drag and drop can either be text labels or it can be images as well. Okay, great. And I'm still seeing your work coming through in real time, just like I did before with the drawing activity. I can see what labels you're moving and where, and if you're elaborating on any of your responses. Okay, nice job, everybody. Some of you have already submitted your work, so I could share this out again. Here I can also give feedback, and then we can continue on. All right, it's okay if you weren't done. Now, here are some examples of full lessons that we have from our language arts section of the Nearpod library. This is just a very, very minimal sample of all the great content that's there. But if any of these are jumping out at you, go ahead and click on these images. They're going to hyperlink into a separate window or tab, and they're going to be the student-paced version of these lessons for you to review. So go ahead and grab any of these if you'd like to go ahead and review them on your own or during the workshop time. And it just gives you an idea or a sense of other additional ELA content that you can find in our library. Okay, does anybody have any questions at all before we keep moving on? Great question. How did you get so many images on one slide? I think you mean in the one with the drag and drop. So that was a pre-made template that came from our library. So our content team did that. But you can add as many images as you want to on a slide. If you're creating a background of a drag and drop, those are going to, you can add your images in there when you go to create the background. If you're doing the same thing with the draw it activity, same concept. You can just add as many images as you want. Those slides were pre-made though. So that did come from our library. And you can find content like that in the library that's pre-made and ready to go. And then students on the flip side can also add in their own images too and provide additional media options that way. Great questions. And let me know if that helps answer your question. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay, any more questions before we switch gears and focus on some social studies content? Okay, good. Keep posting questions if you have them as they come up. So now we're going to switch and we're going to talk a bit about social studies content. So again, you can find all that great content in our library, lessons, videos, activities, everything that's pre-made or ready to go. You can create your own content or edit your own content. You can also do the same thing with videos, but we have a ton of awesome social studies stuff that's ready to be utilized in the library itself. So one of the things that I really want to highlight for social studies is the use of Nearpod VR. Nearpod VR field trips can really make the world come to life for students, and they're fantastic to use for any subject, but specifically social studies. So this can take students to wherever in the world you want them to go and create authentic, real-world learning experiences. They can help explore and interact with meaningful locations that will allow them to apply what they're learning to what they're doing out in the world. And then you can pair these with activities to make student thinking visible. So let's go ahead and dive into this. So this particular lesson or activity comes from the library. It says thinking critically. Now that you know where the site of the Roanoke colony was, so maybe this is from the middle of a social studies lesson on studying the Roanoke colony, we will take a trip to the island. As you look around, imagine what it might have looked like in the 16th century. So that's our prompt for our VR field trip. You could, of course, create whatever prompts you want, depending on what kind of VR field trips you're taking your students on. So this is going to combine Nearpod content with the VR field trips with other Nearpod activities for students to share or explain their thinking. All right. So here is that VR field trip. You can now utilize this on your own. You can click, you can drag, you can move this around in a complete 360-degree view. So here we are on this island where the Roanoke colony is from, and we're being prompted to think about what this might have looked like in the 16th century. Maybe we're seeing some clues of some things hidden in the water. We can zoom in and we can zoom out. We can get a closer look. Maybe we're applying what else we've learned in this social studies unit to what we're going to be doing with this activity. But how cool is this, right? So immersive, really easy for students to use. Now, do we think that these hedges might have been there in the 16th century or anything built back here? Maybe not, or maybe so. I don't know. I'm starting to think about it. I see something over here, maybe some kind of gazebo or monument. Pretty cool. So take a few seconds to explore this VR field trip on your own and then be prepared to start to answer some questions about this. All right, great. All right, so once you've had some time to explore and think about these prompting questions, now it's time to share your responses. So here's another collaborate board. It says, what natural resources did you see at this location? What animals or food do you think might have been found there? So we're thinking about maybe what this would have been like in the 16th century, what you're noticing from this Google VR field trip, and maybe inferring what kind of food you could find there. Food, animals, etc. So again, use this collaborate board. Maybe this time, try to add in an image or a GIF. You can use those by clicking on the icons in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. You can add in images from Google Image Safe Search or any files you have saved in your computer or your drive. So give that a try now. All right, now this time notice that I have to approve your comments before they go live for everybody to see. I wanted to adjust that setting for this particular collaborate board so that you can see that you can do that on these different Nearpod activities. So you can always tweak and adjust these settings depending on what is going to work best for your students. So I can go ahead and I can view all of these to either approve or delete them, or I could just approve them all at once. All right, these are looking awesome. So trees, fruits that grow on trees. You could probably be able to eat fish, make huts with palm trees, insects or birds, fish, wild boars, and you've included GIFs or GIFs and images too to really make this collaborate board come to life. What a cool social studies activity, right? So think about how creative you can get with things like this. Now, the next activity is an open-ended question where you have the option to either write or record the answers to these questions. It says, how would you feel stepping onto this island after a journey of 50 days knowing that this was your new home. So it's sort of putting yourself in the shoes of what people experienced in history, and is asking you to either record or type your responses. This can be super short. If you want to try the recording option, just make sure your microphone is enabled on your device. But if that doesn't work, that's totally fine. You can type instead. So go ahead and see if you can complete this activity. Let's get creative with it. All right, I gave you a little extra time to record. If you were working on that, you can go ahead and submit now. Okay, fantastic. So then we can pull these up and we can share these out with the group, prompt you to share your thoughts, elaborate on what you did. They said, I would feel grateful we were on land, but at the same time would be apprehensive as to what is out there. Awesome. So we're even thinking about social and emotional skills here. We're thinking about history, what this would have been like for people to experience, and tying in those social and emotional skills. I would experience many feelings: fear of the new, excitement of starting something new, lost and scared, need to survey the island to find items that would be used as survival needs. Yeah, for sure. Look how creative these are. These are great. It would be really a really great new adventure. I might end up seasick with so many days at sea. Absolutely. And I could share these out with you independently so that everybody could see what your other students or peers or colleagues have written. And again, we could continue to chat about these activities together as a group. So hopefully that gets you thinking about some social studies activities that you can include in your lessons, or the types of lessons that you could pull from our social studies library. Here are some additional examples. Again, these are all hyperlinked. So if any are standing out to you that you want to explore, go ahead and click on those now. I'm about to give you a couple minutes of independent work time. So grab these lessons. You can go and review them on your own. But we're about to switch gears again and give you some time to practice what you've learned today. Okay, everybody, great. So here's what I want you to do now. We're going to get into our independent workshop time here in just a second. I want you to, first of all, go to your Nearpod account and log in. So open up a separate window or tab and log into your account. Keep this Nearpod lesson open and running, though, because we're going to return to it at the very end. Then I want you to go into the Nearpod library and start searching for content for language arts or social studies. Find some things in our library that you might want to utilize. You can also create or edit your own content if you want to try to do that too, or find those interactive videos to utilize as well. Remember that you can hover over any lesson once it's been added to your Nearpod account. It's very important you add copies of these to your Nearpod accounts so you can launch them or edit them and share them with others. And you can always organize your lessons into folders. So there's going to be a folder tab at the very top of your account page. As you start to add in lessons or create your own content, make sure you set up folders and organize your lessons into those folders so you can keep everything organized and know exactly where to find content to share with your students in the following days, weeks, months, or years. Okay? All right, so I am going to set a timer. We're only going to do about 5 minutes of independent workshop time. It's not a ton of time, but I want to make sure we have some time at the end for open Q&A as well. So again, go into your Nearpod account, open up your library, start searching for content that's there. maybe pull in some lessons, videos, or activities that you might want to use for your subject area. And then be prepared to share out with the group what you accomplish when we come back together. Utilize this time however it's going to be the best use, and really maybe focus on whatever's standing out to you that you've learned in this session so far. What we like to say is that practice makes progress, and a little bit of practice goes a really long way with Nearpod. So I'm going to open up a separate tab, log into my Nearpod account. And then when I go to my quick launch in the upper right-hand corner, I'll be able to launch this for 5 minutes. So again, 5 minutes of independent workshop time. See if you can practice like one or two things that you've learned so far today. Have some fun with this. I'm going to stay quiet while you work, but I'll answer questions that come through in the chat. When we come back together, we'll ask you to share out your final reflections, and we'll share some resources and next steps as well. Here we go. All right, everybody, we just have a couple more seconds left of workshop time, so start navigating back to that original Nearpod lesson. I'm going to ask you to share some final thoughts and reflections, what you're taking away from this session and what you learned. All right, so go ahead and return back to that Nearpod lesson. I am going to add in an activity and ask you to share what did you work on during that time? What are you taking away from this session? What are you excited about? What did you learn? So go ahead and navigate back to that original Nearpod lesson. This will be the last activity I ask for you to share today, but I want to hear your final thoughts and reflections. What were you able to work on? What are you excited and taking away from this session? What are you excited about, I should say, and what are you taking away from this session? And what are your next steps going forward? All right, remember, if you still need to return to that original Nearpod session, the link and the code are on my screen and in the chat. So jump back over to that Nearpod lesson and share what you were able to accomplish, what you're excited about, what your takeaways are. Take just another minute to submit those responses now. All right, awesome. Amelia, you worked on a lesson for writing sentences. This will help your students get comfortable with typing out answers. Nice job. That's awesome. All right, would anybody else like to share what they worked on? Or what they're excited about, what they're taking away from this session? You worked on using something for ELAR lesson plans. This will be able to create lessons for your students or allow you to help create lessons for students. Awesome job. All right, these are great. Anybody else? I'm sure you all did some fantastic work. Remember that practice makes progress with Nearpod, so practicing can really go a long, long way. It's great that you can create a lesson tailored to a specific topic or theme, and at the same time, you can make it fun for the students. Awesome, absolutely. And remember, we have all that pre-made content that you can utilize for language arts and social studies lessons. You can always make your own or do a combination of that, right? Use what's there and make edits or changes as needed. And these lessons will be fun and engaging for all of your students, absolutely. All right, well, thank you to those that shared. We are going to start to wrap this up now. I appreciate the ones that shared out what you were able to accomplish. It sounds like you did some amazing work and that you're excited about using this information going forward. All right, so I'm taking us back to this original lesson. So remember to take time after this session to continue looking through content that you might want to use, sharing these lessons with your students, utilizing all the great tools to engage them, and then taking a look at their data to drive your instructions going forward. All right? These lessons will hopefully help engage all of your students from the very beginning of the year and beyond. So please continue to use Nearpod and continue to learn more about it as you practice with yourselves along with them. If you ever need additional resources, you can always go to nearpod.com/resources or nearpod.com/help. And you can get in touch with our support team as well at support@nearpod.com. So thank you all so much for being here with me today and learning alongside me. You were a great group, and I hope you found this helpful. Good luck with everything for the rest of the summer and back to school. We are always here to support you. And if you would like to provide any feedback, I know that there's some survey links that your district is requesting for this PD day. So if you have a couple extra minutes, if you don't mind completing the feedback form for us as well. This was a specialized PD, and my name is Jess San Giorgio. So you can find specialized PD and Jess on those two first top fields, and then fill the rest out on your own. This is completely optional, but we do appreciate your feedback if you're willing to give it. I will stick around for just another minute or two to see if there's any final questions. But again, thanks so much, everybody. I hope you found this helpful. Please take care and stay safe. Have a great day and an awesome weekend. And we'll be in touch again soon. Thanks so much, everybody.